Hey, and welcome to Superior Sisterhood, the self-care sessions. I'm Nicole Mori, a women's empowerment coach and the host of this series. And today I'm so happy to introduce everyone to Leanne. Hey, Leanne.
Oh,
Thank you so much for joining us. Leanne Wierzbicki is of Breathe, Live, Believe, and she's a yoga teacher and a holistic health and nutrition coach. And she's just a delight to talk to, and I can't wait for you to hear from her. So, Leanne, please, I would love for you to, introduce yourself and share more of what you do.
so as you mentioned, I am a holistic health coach, holistic nutrition coach, a yoga teacher, and I've been involved in the wellness industry for well over 10 years. I've had my own business since 2009. And then before that, I was working in the fitness industry in the world of, I managed briefly a chiropractic facility. I was managing at a Good Life fitness facility. I was managing various different gyms over the years. And yeah, interestingly enough, I started my professional career as a high school English and psychology teacher. So yeah, we went from that all the way over to where I am now. So yeah, for the past 4 years, I've been working with the first response community, so emergency and medical personnel, law enforcement in Thunder Bay, with a program called Yoga for First Responders, where I traveled to the United States to different years to train with a lady who designed that program and her team. Her name is Olivia Mead. And yeah, the Yoga for First Responders program is an interesting and very unique protocol that's designed specifically for people in these types of professions. So I've really dedicated a lot of time and energy over the past 4 years to establishing and then developing and growing that program here. But I've done a whole lot of other things. I had a booth at the market, at the Thunder Bay Country Market, for a couple of years, where my goal was to educate people about plant-based whole foods and how to nourish their bodies, their minds, and their spirits through food in this way, and that those types of foods can taste really good. It doesn't have to taste disgusting. You're not a rabbit food, like lots of people would say. And yeah, then I work with people privately, in their homes, in my home, with yoga, with coaching services, and I work with the general community as well in various drop-in style classes that I have. And I have a calling to work with people who are dealing with really difficult things in their lives, dealing with trauma and healing in that way as well. Remember, when we talk about trauma, we might think of trauma as being, a really big incident, like a car accident or a death or something like that. But actually, if we boil it down, what is traumatic for one person might not be traumatic for another person. So really, most people have endured some level and some sort of trauma in their lives. And so this is why I feel so passionate about working, in a trauma-sensitive, holistic approach with everything that I do. So
I love that you just define that, because a lot of people don't realize that one can be traumatized, and it doesn't have to be like the stereotypical big event that we normally think of. And then knowing that about yourself, that really does impact your lifelong practices of self-care. And so it's really great that I'm so glad that you mentioned that. And as a side note, we have so much in common, because I have my English literature degree, and I've had a booth at the market, and I've worked with police services too. And so I think that's a beautiful way that you can share your gifts to the people that are offering such important service in our community. But back to you, and I would love to hear more about your personal experience with self-care and why it's so important to you personally.
yeah, so my own personal experience with self-care, I think, like it might be for everybody, is an up and down sort of affair. I don't think there's ever this, I like to talk about things being a practice. So I feel like it's just a consistent, constant practice. I'm practicing, I'm going to make mistakes, I'm going to have good days. I'm going to have challenging days. But the bigger picture is that with self-care, it's a big word, right? An all-encompassing thing. It can mean a lot of different things for a lot of different people. So for me, as someone who lives a yogic lifestyle, this is the path I've deliberately chosen. And so, why mess with something that's like time tested, 5,000 years plus, right? It's been around. We know that this system works. So, but even within that, right, it's a kind of an all-encompassing thing. There's so many different aspects of living a yogic lifestyle, of practicing yoga, whether that's sitting on a meditation cushion, whether that's doing the physical postures, which is what most of us think of when we think of yoga, whether it's, living by a set of principles about how we treat ourselves and how we interact in our world, non-harming, non-stealing. Self-care falls into that, category as well. What we eat, the foods we put into our bodies, the products we put onto our bodies, the type of community and company we keep. So all of these things are influential factors in self-care. And the important thing to remember is that we don't have to do everything, but to pick one thing, piggyback it onto a habit that you already have, like getting up and you go and brush your teeth. So then automatically put your kettle on and have your morning lemon water while you're brushing your teeth, right? The kettle's boiling, you brush your teeth, you come out, your water is ready. And there, it's easy. You've piggybacked it onto something that's already established as a habit pattern for you. So yeah, I remind myself constantly, as someone who has in the past been a real overachiever and very driven by willpower and determination, which served me well during a certain time in my life because I needed that. But now I welcome the opportunity to, it's okay. I can take a step back. I don't need to have necessarily those same qualities now. And what's more important is really tuning in, listening to myself, and giving myself those things that I need at the time that I need them. And sometimes that looks like saying no and setting boundaries and all these different things, which are challenging. Yeah.
I love how you make it sound so accessible, because it can be. It doesn't have to be this big deal. It can just be those simple daily practices. And you've already given so many wise tips about things that we can try ourselves. But, when you think about all the different people that you serve in all the different ways, are there any other self-care techniques that you want to share with us that you find really help others?
The biggest self-care technique, aside from what you eat, right? What you eat and what you put into your body, and, not using chemical-based products and, all of that. Aside from that, in terms of if there was one practice that I would say could be the most potent, the most powerful, it's working with the breath. Yeah. And so depending on who you talk to, you might hear a lot of different approaches about working with the breath. So from the yogic standpoint, just simply put, relaxed and effortless diaphragmatic breathing. And learning, because a lot of us don't have that. So we see all sorts of unhealthy breathing patterns, not only in adults, but even in children. And remembering that these are the patterns, our habits are influenced by our life experiences, right? And sometimes physical issues as well. But, from stress, from trauma, from, right, different things that we've experienced in our lives. And then eventually that manifests physically in the body. And so a lot of the practices that I really emphasize the most on a weekly basis, whether it's with a private client or in classes, is working with the breath, reestablishing a healthy diaphragmatic breathing pattern. And it doesn't, again, that sounds lofty, but all you need to do is, maybe lie down on your belly. We call it crocodile pose. So supporting yourself in crocodile pose, you can look that up another time, see a visual of it, but lying down on the belly, and then you have that point of contact. The belly's on the floor, The chest is slightly elevated so you can feel the lower ribs pressing into the floor. And this is like cross training almost. It's like breath training. And so we notice, just as we're breathing naturally, is my diaphragm moving? And you'll feel it because the belly will press into the floor as the diaphragm moves down, travels down, the belly rises. Or if that's not happening, and teaching about the 5 qualities of healthy breathing. So is my breath, while you're lying in that pose, or maybe you're seated, maybe it doesn't feel good for you to lie on your belly, but maybe you're seated. Even just now, as you're sitting here listening to this conversation, just check in. Is my breathing deep and full? Is it smooth? Is it even? Is it continuous? And is it quiet? So these are the 5 qualities of healthy breathing. So what would be the flip side of that is maybe your breath isn't smooth. Maybe it's, or deep, sorry, maybe it's shallow. Maybe we're chest breathers because we are dealing with a whole lot of stress for a long period of time, and we stop breathing diaphragmatically so much. Keeping in mind that, of course, the diaphragm is the muscle of breathing. So it is doing something, but maybe it's not at its full capacity, right? So we can exercise that. Is my breath even, or is it jagged? Is there like a, right, a catch when I'm breathing in, or maybe it feels constricted or restricted somewhere? Is it continuous? So without pause, unintentional pauses between the inhales and the exhales. Sometimes we catch ourselves holding our breath and we don't even realize that we're doing that. And then quiet. So is my breath loud? Am I a mouth breather, or am I breathing through my nose? So all of these different qualities, and all we're doing is just observing. We're just checking in and noticing and not judging, because that's a really easy state to fall into. And if you do fall into that state of self-judgment, an easier switch is to shift your thoughts in that moment to a space of curiosity. So rather than judging, oh, interesting. Or if you're judging, oh, look at me judging my judging. So, and then we just practice. So how can I make my breath smoother and even? You can count in your mind. You can slow down. And just by this very act of paying attention to your breathing, you're also meditating. You have this one pointed focus. So you're kind of getting 2 things out of working with the breath. And the breath influences absolutely everything. Right? It's the gateway to accessing our nervous systems so that we can reset, come back into homeostasis, back into our parasympathetic nervous system, out of the stress response. It only takes a few minutes of this mindful, conscious breathing every day. We can hit the reset button as many times in a day as we need to by working with that breath.
Thanks for taking the time to break it down, because, for such a basic thing as breathing, a lot of us, aren't aware of a healthy way to breathe. And so even as you were talking, I was holding my breath. So it's so great to not only have the reminders of how to do it, but the 5 points that you mentioned.
Yeah, we often we don't think about it because it's an automatic thing that happens without thought. But if we do take the time to think about it, everything begins with awareness. And like I said, it's a simple practice, and it can influence you on every single level. The breath influences all of our body systems, everything, not to mention mentally, right? The mind and feeling calm, and even our posture. It's everything.
Everything, indeed. So just to delve a little bit deeper, just wondering, when you work with folks around this whole area of self-care and in all of your specialties, do you find that there are any underlying issues that can go on for people when they find that they're not taking as good of care of themselves as they could? Any thoughts around that?
So from the yogic perspective, if I'm understanding your question correctly, I would say that it's these things, you may have heard these words, and maybe they're brand new words to you if you're not a person who knows much about yoga, but these terms called vasanas or samskaras. And both of these things are basically impressions. They're grooves that are imprinted into our bodies, in our minds, in our cells. And what that means is our life experiences are written into the tissues of our bodies. And so I mentioned there's an author by the name of, and a doctor by the name of Dr. Bessel van der Kolk, and he wrote the book, The Body Keeps the Score. It does have a trauma focus, but it's not just about trauma. The bigger picture is that he explains in depth how our life experiences actually are stored inside the body. And oftentimes we're unaware. We don't realize what's stored inside the body. But just knowing that it's possible for your life experiences to be stored inside the body gives you an opportunity to start to practice paying attention and practicing awareness, and then addressing that with breath work, with yoga, the asana practice, all of these things which can lift those grooves, right? And eventually over time replace them with more positive habits. But keeping in mind, this whole principle works on the fact that the things that have happened to us, so our life experiences, positive and negative, are imprinted into our bodies. So our past is affecting our present, which also shapes our future. So this is empowering. It's not something that's meant to be daunting or scary. Some people talk about karma in this way. This is also talking about our karmic impurities, things that we're carrying forward. It's the same thing. And what all that means is not a scary thing. It's actually empowering. We have the opportunity to change our actions and our behavior and our thoughts now so that we will positively be shaping our future. So you have this, it's a sense of control and power, right? I can do this. I have a choice. Even though, things that have happened to us in the past we're dealing with that now. But I was recently away at the Himalayan Institute, which is a place that I feel very strongly about and called to for a really long time. And I finally made it there after 10 years of thinking about it. And one thing that really stuck out for me about this concept was that the comment that was made of use your karmic impurities, use your karmas, so your past experiences, the things that we, might not necessarily love, but use your advantage. Right? So it's, again, a sense of empowerment. We can use what we've got, work with what you've got, start where you are, and then starting to implement these practices moving forward. So to answer your question in a very long-winded way, I think that those are the things that are underlying everything else that we're doing. And so that's why it can be challenging to take care of ourselves. We might have been taught in the past that that wasn't okay, or we might not have been raised in an environment where self-care or even recognizing, emotions. Maybe that wasn't even part of your growing up, right? Maybe that was never okay for you to do. So we're working with that now in the present, and then beginning to slowly change that and shape the way we're reacting now, and then positively shaping the future. So just practice.
Amazing. No, that's perfect. I'm all about empowerment, and you've just so eloquently explained the whole process. And thank you for that. And so as we're just wrapping up here, do you have any final thoughts? And definitely tell us how we can connect with you or learn more.
So as you mentioned, my business name is Breathe, Live, Believe. So the modality, I'm not a very techie person, but I am on Facebook, and I do have a Breathe, Live, Believe Facebook page, as well as my own Leanne Wierzbicki page. And I treat them both as informative and business type pages where I try to share information that can be empowering for people, uplifting for people, encouraging. It doesn't mean that everything that you'll see there is a feel-good story, right? You might read about trauma or about PTSD or whatever the case is, but these are realities of our lives. And the point is that there are tools, there are practices that we can do to navigate these experiences better. So that's really my goal, is to share information like that with people in any way that I can. And so sometimes that's an online presence, and sometimes it's like this today, although much less frequently, and sometimes more often, right, on a weekly basis, I'm interacting with people face to face. And so even if you're not a first responder, I have a couple general drop-in classes through the week, which are offered at, no financial investment, because the goal is to reach as many people as I can and spread this information and help people heal and give them the tools, so that they can do it for themselves, because nobody can heal you. Nobody can heal me, only me. Only you can do that for yourself. And so the guidance that you receive from other people, myself, other people in your community, practitioners, they're all giving you tools for your own empowerment, for your own self-care, to kind of put in your little holistic kit. And you can, access that in any way that works for you. And just a little at a time. So I'd love to connect with you in person at one of those classes or online, whatever feels best.
Awesome, Leanne. Thank you. And I applaud your generosity, and I thank you so much for joining us and sharing all of your wonderful wisdom. And on behalf of Leanne and myself, we want to thank all of you for watching, and we encourage you to get out there and take good care of you. Bye for now.
See you later.